Okay, so Sam, what do you remember about working at IH Bydgoszcz?
Oh, nothing. No, I do remember a lot. Um, as I said before, interestingly, I remember turning up being somebody who didn't know if they wanted to teach, and through the nurture and genuine, amazing work, and nowhere's perfect, but the amazing stuff that was going on in Bydgoszcz, I turned into somebody who dearly loved teaching. So, I think it's I learned the real difference between personal development and when I spoke to a lot of people who weren't on that journey of like developing their teaching and being challenged and learning to reflect, the power of reflection, like where that might take you. 2 years in a school like Bydgoszcz with reflection is worth 10 years somewhere else where you're going to stagnate, maybe more. They're not comparable. So that's one thing that comes to mind.
Okay, and what are the main things that you've done since you've left the school, like just in terms of where the starting at Bydgoszcz like took you later on?
Yeah, cool. Okay. I really do thank it for the skills, the transferable skills are wild. They really, really are. So, so Bydgoszcz was teaching, senior teaching, ADOS, and like really starting to understand and learn like, oh, wow, I really like helping other people develop. I really love getting into this kind of like coaching. I didn't know it was coaching at the time. And then going to Delta. And the strange, funny thing about Delta is that I haven't done much TEFL since. I've done some summer schools, right, which was really useful. But I kind of went into state school teaching and a few other things, but I don't regret it. Like, it was a really wonderful experience too. And, Sandy, we've had many of these chats, Delta is far from perfect, and there were many other routes to the same destination. But it really showed me like, whoa, actually, I do know a lot. I have learned a lot. And that was a really nice thing. And, I really enjoyed doing it with Luke. As anybody knows, we were like besties, still are. So that was cool. So I kind of got friendships. I got a huge amount of like understanding of who I am. So many gifts. I don't think that I would have. I definitely would be a very different person had I not gone to Poland. I then went. So Delta was in Spain. I then went to India for 6 months. I trained to be a yoga teacher because it was something that I wanted to do. I was still trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do? And yeah, did a lot of really cool things, sat in the Himalayas, had a lot of fun, came back and was like, what am I going to do? And, I don't know why I decided that I would go and do PGCE. I think I just really wanted to test out what being at home would be like, because it had been about 7 years, I think, 7.5 years or so since I'd been home. So I was like, I'll just do it for a year and see what it's like. And my brother's in Liverpool and I enjoyed that. And so I worked in a state school. My second placement was an SEN school. I was really lucky that a job came up when I was there. I applied for the job, got the job. And yeah, the rest is history for the last couple of years.
Okay, so then you've done kind of three main kinds of teaching there, I think. You mentioned like EFL and yoga and SEN teaching. What do you think are maybe the similarities and differences between those like different kinds of teaching?
There is no one way to learn. Learning styles and all of this, and like, do they exist? They've been debunked. Let's not prove it. The ultimate truth is, if you make your lessons engaging and you do a bit of everything and you keep coming to the table, and that's huge. That's a massive thing. I think we can get really locked into like the kind of whirlpool of like, oh, how could that have been better? How could this have been better? I think a lot of it is just about turning up, and over time you'll really get there, and you'll start to learn to trust like what works, what doesn't work. It's a really interesting journey, isn't it? I think like the first probably 3, 4, 5 years of teaching are a real roller coaster ride.
And what do you think? So being at Bydgoszcz for that first couple of years, like when you were a teacher before you became a senior or an ADOS,
Yeah.
What do you think you specifically got out of being in Bydgoszcz in those couple of years?
Just the support. Amazing levels of support, incredible. Just to know that, and it wasn't spoon feeding. Sometimes there's time for that. Sometimes it's like genuinely just having somebody just come and be like, well, look, this is how I would teach it, or like this is an option, and like being able to chat that through. And I really do think the difference, but it is night and day. If you go to a school with that kind of environment, which believes in professional development genuinely and encourages it in its students, you will be an incredible teacher 2 years on. And if that's a huge thing, a huge thing. And I think I'm very grateful that I just randomly rocked up there. Like, there was no, for me, there was no real plan. I'm really grateful. And I think that's true of any school that has that strong ethos. So I would encourage anybody starting out teaching, or anybody who is looking for a pivot or a change, just go to a school like that for a year and just see who you are at the end of it. It's going to challenge you. It's going to push you as well, which is great.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has got any questions. It seems to just be me, Ash, and Sam there.
Everyone's gone away. It's been too weird. It's been too weird and tangenty.
Has anybody else got any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go on.
This is about your blog and stuff like that, if that's okay?
Yeah, of course.
Since you opened up the conversation, have you noticed that people have treated you differently?
This is interesting. At the beginning, I think we always think what's going to happen is going to be worse. So for the first 6 months, where I was like not really sure, was like just a bit white knuckling, not drinking and struggling a bit, and I turn up to places and I didn't really believe that. I don't think I was fully committed. People pick up on it subconsciously, and they're like, "Oh, come on, man, come on now." Nowadays, the world that I inhabit and the world that I live in, it's really funny. Like, people will say things to me like, "Oh, it's really unfortunate you can't drink." I laugh at them. I'm like, "No, mate, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, it's great. Like, I wouldn't have known life on the other side if that hadn't happened, right?" So I think a lot of the worry that we have of what other people are going to think, etc., and is actually in us. We're seeing the world as we are, not as it is. But there is this massive issue of stigma that needs to be dealt with. And like we do basically promote this heavy drinking culture and tell everybody that's great. And then if you end up in a bit of a pickle, we go, "Oh no, put you in a box, you don't exist, blah, 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 blah. We're not going to talk about it." So, there's these two things going on at the same time. But if you surround yourself by people that know how cool it is not to drink and then enjoying themselves, it's not a worry.
Yeah, that's a really good question though. Has anybody got any other questions? I'm gonna read a postcard that I've got on my door over there. It says, "Just remember that sometimes the way you think about a person isn't the way they actually are." And I think I have that on my wall to remind myself that what I think other people might be feeling isn't necessarily what they are feeling. Or
I'll leave it on this, Sandy. One of my favorite quotes ever is, "If a pickpocket met God, all they would see is pockets."
Yeah.
Because we just see through this filter.
Yeah.
And do you know what? There's real magic in just being aware that the filter exists. We don't all have to be enlightened, but just knowing, and by the way, I'm definitely not, just knowing that filter exists is really, really powerful. So
yeah, I think that's a great place to finish. Yeah, unless anybody has anything else. Yeah. I'm going to stop the